All right, I am standing by the G2 locker room right now. After their summer split performance, experts has deemed this the best team that we have in Europe. But how big is the gap between this team and the rest of our teams in the league? Well, today, we're going to measure it and find out.
Welcome everyone to day 2 of the LEC 2023 season finals live from Berlin, Germany. Today our road to Montpellier continues with the reigning LEC summer champion G2 facing off against Team BDS for a spot in France. And a trip to World. Let's walk. Yumi is Ben. Okay.
Fair enough.
Oh! Ben Yumi, okay.
We got the whole crew here involved. I love it.
That's awesome. That's really amazing. And I mean, you know, that's what we always hope. My name is Shox. I'm joined by Yamato and Ender ahead of the second match of the season finals. You impressed?
I'm impressed by the final so far, but I'm confused, but cool.
Yeah.
Ban Yumi.
Yeah, we're doing the arms crossed today.
It's personal.
Yeah, it is personal. Anyways, let's take a look at the bracket because this will be our second best of 5 of the kickoff of the season finals. Now, yesterday, the Mad Lions, they locked top 3, securing a spot in Montpellier and Worlds after their victory over Excel, which was convincing to say the least.
It was a classic Mad Lions. It's crazy how fast we think so little of Mad, and then how crazy, how fast they make us forget. I think this was a very nice series, return to form. Mad Lions also, Kazi mentioned, of course, on PGL. He said that it feels like this version of Mad Lions has the potential to reach new highs.
And while this was a 3-0, and like Mad Lions did look very strong, especially towards the end of this game, like setting up picks inside the enemy jungle with that insane comeback in Game 2, this was not like blowouts, especially in the first 2 games, right? Game 2 required a big comeback, required Karzi's Sivir absolutely crushing it in the team fight.
It did, and I think we always have this with the Mad Lions, and specifically this, we were talking about it in the green room, right? When it comes to these big series, these playoff matches, I think Karzi really is a big game player and Mad is a big game team when it comes to Europe specifically, because often we see them fall behind, but also sometimes just crush it in the team fights straight up, and I think that wasn't that surprising.
I think it's just a hallmark of a team that has the capacity to go far. Also looking at these individual players and also Mad Lions historically is just that they have resilience. I felt like they made mistakes, they were sometimes sloppy, but it didn't feel like they ever skipped a beat. They kind of regrouped, they played compact, and they found ways to actually attack the game once again.
Yeah, I also feel like they just came in with a really great plan, sort of matching and even beating Excel with their own scaling game plan in game number 1. In game 3, they went much heavier into pick comp into playing for side lanes too. So it showed a lot of depth that's exciting for a team that's now qualified for Worlds.
Yes, 4th time after the rebrand from Splice that they qualify for the World Championship. It really is insane consistency, and I think they catch a lot of flack continuously when they do get there, and I know obviously it's because they haven't gotten to those heights internationally they would have loved, but... What?
But this time, they won a best of 5 to get there.
Yes.
So you can't hate on it this time.
They did. Also, they just, I mean, this is the system that the LEC functioned in, right? And maybe it is just well suited to their approach because they peaked in spring. They did well enough in winter. They didn't do well in summer, but they earned the right to play that best of 5 to go to Worlds.
I also think, like, we saw in the cast yesterday, they ran this graphic that showed, like, over the last 4 years, like, what teams have actually qualified from EU to play at Worlds. It was like G2 Fnatic, okay, it makes a lot of sense. And this just was always Rogue plus Mad Lions. So, like, these teams have been in the top 4 so consistently for so long now, and Mad Lions have definitely cemented that.
I know lots of fans of other teams want to mauled, but it's a skill issue because they keep making it. So what are you going to do? Let's take a look at the meta takeaways from day 1. Of course, brand new patch coming in, but pretty stock standard stuff.
I feel like, you know, usually when it comes to just European League of Legends, you stick to what's standard. We saw basically it could have been 13-13, nothing new, because all of the same champions were picked. We see it here on the board. It's like 6 champions that were played all like the entire time in the season were also picked yesterday, and I'm hoping that something changes today at least.
Yeah, so specifically what we were seeing there was the top. Hey, what you doing? It's the 10 most picked or banned highest presence champions during the summer season. So out of those, 6 of them were picked or banned 100% of our games yesterday. One of them was also played, and there was Vi, Milio, Nico that were absent. So just goes to show meta didn't shift yesterday, but I suspect we might get a different look, a little bit of a different flavor heading in today, because with yesterday it was like, okay, Excel, the scaling teamfight team, and Mad Lions for the most of it played into that in games 1 and 2, matching the scaling. In G2 department, however, I think they're going to be on board with going for the aggressive junglers, right? Like the Lilias, the Kazakhs. Think about what Yike was so good on when he came in to the league at the start of this year. It was all about the carry junglers, with Caps playing tank mids, with Mickey on melee supports when everyone else was playing ranged. I think we're going to see a very different look from G2.
Yeah, I hope so, because the only thing really that is new that we saw was the Talia was banned in every game by Excel. They removed Talia. We saw the Camille, which is kind of a placeholder for Jax. Kind of exciting. Camille is fun.
Jax, he said.
And our
I think
favorite.
it's like Jax could have been picked in the exact same spot, right?
Because say the C champion.
Oh, Corki.
Oh, yeah. Bring me back to
you played a dangerous game there for a second.
Yeah. It lost, right? So there you go.
That's true.
Thank
Though,
God.
I was actually a big fan. As an option like into something like the Gnar, of course, with the extra flat damage you get on the ultimate on those auto attacks, gives you a lot of threat when you all in around level 6. But also in the way Mad Lions was playing, which was heavy, looking for dives to set that Gnar behind and then activating a side lane with the LeBlanc there too. I think that was a really cool game plan.
I think it's just we've had always these discussions about what is like European League of Legends, and usually it's like play through bottom side, snowball through bottom side, tank top, something simple in the jungle that can contest level 3. And I feel like the teams that have the more experienced players are capable of playing more dynamic games, for example, through top side, through mid, and through bot. That's why it's so hard to play formulaic League of Legends currently.
Do you think it's a general tendency for the LEC teams in the region, I'm not talking internationally, that when there comes a lot of patch changes and a lot of new possibilities, they revert to simplicity over ingenuity? Or is that like too much of a broad term for all the teams and their different approaches?
The way I would frame it is basically like these early game comps that require precision with, for example, the Nidalee. It's like playing a composition with a gun that only has 1 bullet. And if you miss, the enemy will just smack you with the gun, because with these compositions, with the tanks and the scaling compositions, you have so many chances to come back in the game. And we see a lot of sloppiness that invites these compositions to come back.
I literally remember when I first joined the LEC 2018, we were on a desk, I think a finals desk for that.
Okay.
And I was so convinced, I'm like, look, top lane is what matters in this matchup. It's going to be so big. And you're like, yeah, you know, that's how both teams have been playing all year. But it's not going to matter. Both top laners are going to lock in tanks and teleport bot lane at level 3, because the only thing that matters is the scaling team fights. That's where we get the simmers and everything. Literally just that, and it came true. So I've been bought in ever since you told me that.
With that, let's see what we're going to get today. It's BDS versus G2, and I want to take a look at kind of the bigger stories of these teams, starting with BDS, of course. Or no, let's start with G2. A
Yeah,
team
of course.
that...
Get them out of the way so
Yeah,
we
get
can
them out of
focus
the way.
on BDS.
By the way, when it comes to kind of jinxing powers, we have the All-Pro, and we all know what happened in LCK. We have everybody like heralding them. They went 18-3. Then Goldberg has the tape measurer. It's so
which
jinxable.
way is the gap going, though? Because
Yeah.
if BDS win, I don't know.
It's so jinxable. But in any case, let's talk about their year as a whole. And I think we can all say it's been a good success. 2 titles out of the 3, but we have to remember that it was controversial at the beginning of the year. The jungler brought in Yike over Jankos.
Yeah, it's a tough, big shoes to fill, right? Jankos, of course, the GOAT jungler from Europe. Yike coming in as the rookie after, a very, very strong year in, of course, the LFL. And then, of course, the Hans Sama being brought back from Team Liquid. And then Mickey, of course, jumping back into G2. This is a big switch up. But I feel like every time speaking to G2, speaking to their staff, speaking to their players, their intention was super, super clear. They're trying to build a team that is ready to do serious damage internationally. We saw that shift up, especially after spring, because they were very bot lane centric, snowball centric, and that didn't really land well when it came to the international stage. In summer, they've switched things up.
Yeah, I think that's sort of been the name of the game for G2 over somewhat rocky year, right? Ending in the absolute high notes, but they're definitely want spring back.
MSI, spring,
right?
probably not what they wanted.
MSI, they outperform Mad Lions, but they definitely want more than just that.
That's like
on
winning the
international
Loser
stage.
Olympics or
Right,
something.
Exactly.
I beat the team from my own region. Let's go.
Did we get a podium though? No. But regardless, I think that G2, especially like right when they came into winter, talking about like how they integrated Yike into the team, playing the carries, then switching into a more like team fight style later on, having flexibility around the bot lane with the reuniting of Hans and Mickey. It has been a very solid year-long project for this team, so I don't think you can ever discount them as the favorite.
No, and they are the first seed going into these season finals. And then we have BDS, and for me, it is so interesting that BDS is a team of which I have a totally different impression than I did at the beginning of the year. To change so many people's minds, not just on the Rift, but around it, is such a hard thing to do, but they've done it.
100%. It's like they faced the challenge of, they had so much rubble of their past history that was covering every kind of possibility that any fan of the LEC would believe that BDS could conquer. Because in the end, at the beginning of the season, everyone thought they're going to be 10th and 9th together with Astralis, with the new system. People were partially celebrating. They brought in Labrov, Crowny and Adam. They had their stint in, of course, the LFL, and people didn't expect much of them. If we put that in contrast with what they've achieved, Spring was a massive, massive conquering and a success for them.
Yeah, and that's where this tournament gets interesting, because for them, right, you know they're for sure an above average team, but you see that second place peak in spring. So this team already, like you said, has blown preseason expectations out of the water, but that's no longer good enough for them. Spring elevated their drive, their hunger to win and to advance to a stage like Worlds to fight for the trophy. So this is their chance now that they're gonna have to take advantage of.
They need to tap into what they found in spring if they want to start the season finals by beating G2. So let's hear what their coach has to say, who's catching up with Dracos.
Thank you very much, Shox. I am now joined by GoTo ahead of this series versus G2. First question, this is a big day for you, a big day for BDS. Winning here means qualifying for Worlds and also qualifying for Montpellier. And as a team with a ton of French people, what does it mean to you to potentially be playing on French soil in front of a home crowd?
I mean, I think for everyone in the team, it means really a lot. It's really a big opportunity. Also, we've been working the whole year for that, right? So, I mean, we are really looking forward to that. Also, I mean, we mainly coming from the LFL, right?
Yep.
So it was really cool last year to have all these events and offline experiences. And I think, I mean, it's just like so insane. And I mean, we are all working for these moments, I think, as competitors.
Yeah.
So it means a lot.
And I think for a lot of the BDS fans out there, they're excited to see the progress that you have made since you were knocked out in summer. And I think whenever we talk about BDS, a lot of us look at the heights of spring. What has the progress been like behind the scenes to show us the best possible version of the team?
I mean, after spring, it was hard to redefine why we went successful in spring. And so we needed to rebuild a bit everything, like figure it out our new identity with meta changes. So it was hard, but at the same time, it took us time. But I think we finally found something that is viable for us. I think right now, everyone in the team, from coaches to the organization to the player, I think we finally found out our new identity, and I think we're pretty confident and pretty excited also to try all of this against G2 today.
Yeah, and certainly an excellent opportunity to test something against G2. The winners of summer, one of the big things about playing against G2, especially on a new patch, I feel like, at least watching from home, is their tendency to bring out crazy picks. We didn't see, I feel, a whole ton of innovation in the XL versus MAD series yesterday, but what does your preparation look like when you're preparing for a team like G2, who are notorious for pulling out an occasional Lilia or a new pick or really trying something wacky on a new patch? How does that affect what you guys do getting ready for the series?
I mean, I think against G2, first you need to look at yourself, because that's probably the first step that they do. So you need to understand how they will approach the series themselves. And then when you understand a bit about what they might do in draft or how they are approaching the meta, then you need to not go too deep, because they will go super deep. And if you start to do it yourself, you will lose yourself, and then you will not work in the proper way. But at least find the bigger picture and understand how they will attack you, because they will attack. So we're just like, yeah, it's a lot of look at yourself first and then prepare the right tools to defend or to attack also against their playstyles.
Yeah, I really like everything that you said there, because I think there are teams we've seen in the past who get a little bit too lost in trying to follow them down the rabbit hole, but it seems like you guys have a pretty good head on your shoulders when it comes to respecting what they're doing without losing sight of what it is that BDS wants to do. Good luck today in the series to you and the entire team. That's going to do it from us here. Back to you, Shox.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's the answer we hear usually when we ask about, when it's a G2 that's performing well. It's usually just, well, we have to focus on ourselves, which makes a lot of sense.
100%. I've been in that spot. I remember 2019 G2 preparing against those guys. Like, you'd get yourself dizzy and play champions you've never played before. And then
talking about G2?
We're talking about G2.
All right, hold this for a second, will you?
All right, I'm holding it.
Thank you.
How do I operate this?
You don't have to do anything. Just keep it there for now. Yeah, it's okay.
Just hold it the whole segment.
Right.
Anyways, I heard the coach also talking about he felt that they lost what made them good. Well, I hope he's watching, because it's lucky day. Because we talked about the BDS formula when they had their highest highs, which were in spring. So how does it work? How did they win?
Honestly, you have to start with the wild card, right? You have to start with the wild card that is Adam. Adam is the greatest wild card that you can have, because he does so much things that are unexpected. But at this point, we have enough footage and volume of knowing where he finds success. It comes from the early roams, the level 3 ganks, the TPs onto mid, the roams, the TPs back at the top. He did the Sion split maps all over the board. He just tries to keep the enemy on his toes all the time.
It's funny, right? Because when you usually think of a top laner, let's say solo queue, for example, and they only pick Olaf, Zed, Darius, you think of a guy who's only playing for himself, who just wants to be the carry. But that's not how he operates. He operates in the sense where these carry picks get him access to having push in the top lane, and with this push he gets time where he can be elsewhere on the map. And that's why Adam was so good in spring, because every single time he had a move, he would use it elsewhere on the map. He wouldn't necessarily just go back.
I think the trickiest part for a player like Adam now is that the portion that was the mystery of Adam, the unexpected, has now become the expected. It is important to keep innovating in trying to keep ahead of the curve, because now everyone knows playing against Adam, you have to expect those roams, you have to expect those champions, and it allows you to prepare in a very, very specific way. And when you do, the natural edge is no longer there. So I'm hoping that Adam brings something fresh to the table.
At the same time, the meta has just moved over.
That's the thing as well. Like, you look at the old TP changes, right? That was at the 14-minute mark. The Adam strategy was he reverse engineered it. Instead of in the good old days where you just TP bot, he walked bot, then TP'd back top when the slow push came in from the push he had initially. So he just perfect min-maxed every single time they went for some of the objectives.
And now that's not as possible, so let's hope we get some new plans. But of course, it was never the top lane standalone, particularly in the strat. Shio was so important as well, right? And we used to say when he was at his best, he was counter jungling. They had the level 1 plan. So does it just hang together so much that if A doesn't work, B doesn't work?
No, 100%. I think just as we mentioned before, it's like the game has become so dynamic. And when we think of Shio at his best, he was always controlling the enemy jungle super well, understanding, making sure that his mid and top was secure, and any amount of free time, he would just funnel that into Crowny no matter what. He just had this roam in bot lane, and all roads led to roam, and it was very easy for him to be streamlined in his gameplay.
Yeah, but I think what's really important here is the forward and counter jungle percentage, because the team was really good at giving resources to Shio first in the early game. game. Quite often they had a level 1 skirmish or plan, something that would give him an edge against the enemy jungler so he could outpath him. Once he had these resources for himself and he was ahead of the enemy jungler, now it was time to finally pay the tax back and give it back to the bot lane. So it's something for something in that essence, and we just haven't seen the same way where they've been able to get Shio ahead and funnel it into bot lane.
And that's so tricky, right? Because the best version of BDS is where they find advantages to Crowny, and then he just dominates the game, you know? Like, they find ways to pressure into bottom side. Labrov was very dynamic in the support champions, and then Crowny later, if he had a 500 gold lead, 1k gold lead, then he was always delivering in fights. And they could sacrifice so much of their efficiency by overgrouping on these Drakes and making sure they're in position, and follow through on that by just making sure that he farms, and then the side lane farm just didn't matter because the meta was strictly AD heavy.
That's the thing, right? Spring was just the Crowny meta.
Yes,
Not only just the AD, but also just the enchanters that was there to facilitate it. The Yuumi, the Seri working. Seri still works, and Crowny can probably still perform on it. The problem is we haven't seen it. And back then, it was so much easier for him to perform in the late game team fights. And while Crowny has stable laning phase, his best state in the game is when he gets to show his prowess in the team fights. He's so good at finding the right position at the moment to strike.
And I think the key thing, you know, that pieces everything together is just the fact that in the end, when BDS were so streamlined in their gameplay, it also simplified how they needed to approach later on because they could rely on the same thing. It allowed them to sacrifice efficiency on side in preparation for those objective setups. They were always there first because they were willing to sacrifice those CS. And as long as Crowny was farming, taking the jungle camps, taking the mid wave, he would always hit the right beats, and they took absolutely zero risk when it came to the Drake preparation.
That's the thing, right? Everything here comes together. Adam moving first, overgrouping, as you say, to be here before the enemy, and it was a time where not many was actually cross-mapping too hard. So I think it's a regard of BDS figuring out the correct formula first, but then also just the fact that other teams didn't punish them as hard. So it's a bit of both in this essence.
It is, but you see on every single one of these graphics, because we're talking about the winning formula, Spring 2023, you know, the Dragon stats, the Crowny crushing stats, Adam, Sheo, everything. And I guess the big question is, other teams were able to adapt throughout summer, and they weren't as much. And I'm not saying everyone had a great time, because I feel like a lot of our teams underperformed in summer. And how meta dependent was it? In other words, how much faith do you have that they can replicate a strategy like this again?
I think just the meta is so heavy in a way where the enemy team can pull you in directions. They can make a lopsided change in the top lane matchup. For example, enemy picks Renekton, you can match with an Ornn, or you can match with a Jackson. All of a sudden, that simple champion choice changes the whole dynamic of how you have to approach the early game. And that level of dynamic gameplay makes you play in a way that doesn't necessarily allow you to just funnel into bot.
While I agree, I think it's also so much more than meta that's been wrong with BDS in summer.
Yes,
Asia has still been a priority champion in the mid lane. We just saw that yesterday as well. That was a champion that Nuke piloted really well. He's been super good on the control mages, which is a complete contrast to what he did in the beginning. So I'm hoping to see that Nuke will also be unleashed on some of the picks, and maybe even Shio on some AP junglers instead can start taking charge against Yike.
And they have to start now, Indeed versus Yike and versus G2, and you've been running around with the tape measure the whole time. How wide is the gap? Tell us.
Well, I still haven't found it yet, so maybe we'll figure it out in this best-of series later.
Oh, I love the jinxes going on. But listen, it'll be hard to jinx because they went 18-3 in summer, and G2 also has had a distinct, different approach, Yamato, coming out of MSI, knowing that they can't make the same mistakes when they get, if they get, to internationals again.
I think already in spring, right, when everything was so bot late game carry centric, they dropped games against the likes of Mad Lions. They didn't win the split, even though on paper everyone expected them to do so. And then coming into MSI, they kept trying to do this early game style with the Nautilus mid, connect into bottom side, dive bot. Even with massive leads, they didn't manage to close out the games. So I think that they got into the habit of having two big leads that they couldn't necessarily recreate against tougher teams. So they've been focusing more on the objective focus, on how to connect together.
And if they did, they lost at MSI. Remember that game?
Yes, the Draven.
Unlosable.
Unlosable. And then still they managed to do so because the opponent was so tough. So I feel like G2, they are thinking bigger. They're thinking the World Championship. And I'm happy that that's the approach.
Yeah, I think it was also just they weren't challenged enough to the point where no one really in the late game where you had to win by macro, that wasn't really a thing. As you said, it was just win lane, win game. And I think that's the approach that changed after MSI. And the victories we've started seeing now, we have seen that not only has individuals stepped up, but also their game plan after they finally reached that mid game is so much scary. And honestly, probably one of the best thing about G2 right now.
But a few of the individuals need to be talked about as well, I think. Caps Claps is back, and he was gone for a long time, I want to say. But I wasn't even here in summer, so explain it to me. How good was he?
Yeah, but he was insane. Like, he got back on champions like the Tristana, like the Nico, where Caps, honestly, it's hard to say this as an analyst because it's not really a factor that you measure on, but he looked more happy playing this champion. It looked like it was his style. You're finally on. You're not looking at him playing Nautilus. You're not looking at the anywhere. He's the facilitator. This is a guy that started playing up in lane. He had the second highest lane percentage in summer. He no longer wanted to play for side lanes. He wanted to play for himself and be a carry. And because mid lane had all of this prior with him being there, it made getting these early objectives so much easier.
I spoke with Whippo about how it is to play with Caps in a team, and he told me plain and simple, if he gets a lead, he knows how to win the game. He knows how to drag his teammates to win the game. He knows how to take very positive attention and really deliver in key moments. And I feel like describing Caps is the exact same way I would also describe Mickey X. Mickey X with the fat engage here on the rel, when Mickey gets an advantage, when they start winning on bot, all of a sudden he just starts snowballing across the whole map. When Caps and Mickey are ahead, everyone feels it.
And I think Mickey in summer has also just been absolutely insane. Some of the changes that came into, well, the summer patch, of course, with the minion changes, how it works to roam, that should have nerfed supports. Mickey's kill participation in summer went up to 80%, which is absolutely insane for support roaming around the map. And also taking into context, this is G2. They get a lot of solo kills. That's a lot of actions on the map. So this is difficult. But Mickey, I mean, throughout summer and almost probably to this point, he's just been the best support in the league.
100%, and just his pairing together with Hans Sama. Hans Sama has been playing Kog'Maw, he's been playing more of the scaling champs, still has the Draven and the Kalista in his back pocket, just makes them into such a lethal duo. It's very interesting to watch, and the way I would describe Mickey is just, you know, fear the support that can be anywhere whenever he's missing. That is just pressure that can't be explained unless you're in the lobby, in the game against the guy.
It's also really interesting because I think both Hans and Mickey have had periods where people would have doubted them, right? And where they probably also rightfully would have said, this is not my best performance overall. But you just see when you find the pairing and you put them back together where it can lead. And I want you to repeat what you said in rehearsal about Mickey, Amato.
What did I say?
If he doesn't get MVP, you will eat a shoe.
Oh, yeah. If Mickey doesn't get MVP, I'll eat a shoe, bro.
This shoe?
That particular shoe, maybe not. Like, that looks pretty heavy to eat.
Yeah.
Like, I'll probably like find some loophole, get like a bakery to make a chocolate shoe for me. But yeah,
okay,
I'll eat a shoe.
Yeah.
In one way or another.
It just shows your vote of confidence. We have about 30 seconds left here, and I think it's clear to everybody that G2 should be the favorites. They are the favorites. We shouldn't skirt around it. But what does BDS have to tap into? And do you believe they can do it today?
It's the bot lane. It's got to be the bot lane where you got to make a difference. That's one of your main win conditions, one of G2. If you can get the edge there, that's where you can try and have a level playing field.
Well, if they want to find it, it has to be now, because if you win this best of 5, you go to Worlds and you go to Montpellier. So let's find out which team will join the Mad Lions in Montpellier. It's G2 versus Team BDS in our LG Ultra Gear Match of the Week.
For our opening match of the week in the first ever season finals of the LEC, BDS takes on G2 Esports in the upper bracket. The winner will secure their spot for Worlds and get one step closer to Montpellier. The loser gets sent on a detour through the losers bracket.
If G2 is on top of the league, I want everyone to feel like we're the enemy and try to beat us, you know.
BDS had a huge resurgence this year. They've gone from being a 10th place team
only securing a single win at the beginning of the
to
season.
being the spring finalists.
BDS are one win away from being your champion.
It feels amazing, yeah, and I'm very thankful to my teammates.
Each member of the team is stepping up and having impressive performances.
Going right back into the fight. What in turn from LeBron? His devastation popping off in the finals. Crowning is everything. Give him another penta.
Despite that, we do need to consider them as the heavy underdogs when facing off against the team that has lifted 11 trophies in the LEC. Over the course of the year, the only game BDS has taken off of G2 was in the group stage of Winter, in a best of 3 that was eventually won by G2.
Like, for example, Adam, I respect the way he plays the game. He just says, I'm going to play Olaf, Darius, Set, and I'm going to play it good. They are just steadily getting better.
G2 have dominated Europe this year, winning both Winter and Summer convincingly. only losing out in spring due to a self-proclaimed overconfidence.
We have a common thing in G2 that we were really, really cocky at times.
We'll have to see if this overconfidence might make a return after their summer's performance.
Stand in place, finally looking for a kill! Making you so what? Yep, cut, yeah, kill Watson. There's no shot! No shot! How the hell do they keep doing this? And the inevitability of G2's dominance is undeniable!
With a world spot on the line, BDS will need to bounce back from their mediocre summer split and show their spring form once again to prove that they belong amongst the best that Europe has to offer.